Welcome to the debate. Have you ever noticed that, the 10 minutes you spend sitting outside your boss's office, completely terrified to ask for a raise, are actually far worse than the meeting itself?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, your heart rate is spiking, your palms are sweating, and you haven't even opened the door yet.
Exactly. Today, we're tackling that exact paralysis, the psychological framework of negotiation, and specifically, the fear of asking for what we want. We're looking at a text called Dare to Negotiate, which anchors its whole philosophy on a famous quote from Seneca.
Oh, right, the Seneca quote.
Yeah, it goes, "It's not because things are difficult that we don't dare. It's because we don't dare that they are difficult."
Which is a massive philosophical claim to apply to a very nerve-wracking modern problem.
It is, yeah, but I think the text gets it exactly right. See, the primary obstacle in negotiation is largely in our heads. By avoiding the ask, we build up these, imaginary barriers. And the way out, the solution, is to systematically practice in low-stakes environments to dismantle that hesitation. That's how you build real courage.
And I look at it from a completely different angle. Calling these barriers imaginary totally brushes off the real structural risks of negotiating. Plus, trying to cure that very real fear with low-pressure practice, it just doesn't prepare you for a high-stakes reality.
Well, think about what actually happens when we freeze up. The source text hits the nail on the head here. Our minds are incredibly good at overcomplicating a task we just haven't tried yet.
Sure, our minds wander, but
Like, if you're listening to this and you've been putting off asking for a remote work day, you're probably projecting a massive catastrophe in your head, like your boss yelling at you or suddenly questioning your entire work ethic.
right, but wait.
And by not acting, we fill the void with worst-case scenarios. The barrier becomes completely psychological simply because we haven't dared to just ask the question.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why. Saying these barriers are purely psychological ignores the reality of being in a room with someone who holds actual power over you.
Power, sure, but
If we go back to your boss example, we aren't just scared of hearing a simple no. We're calculating the tangible risk of alienating the person who literally signs our paychecks.
right.
That's not an imaginary ghost, you know? That's your rent. Calling it an imaginary barrier trivializes the very legitimate risk assessment our brains are doing in that moment.
But does it trivialize the risk, or does it just correctly identify how much we inflate it? Yes, the stakes, your rent, your job, those are real.
Very real.
But the paralysis comes from the lizard brain screaming that you'll be fired simply for asking the question, which, rarely happens. And that brings us to the text's mechanical fix for this. It's about building a behavioral habit.
Okay, but how?
Think about Olympic weightlifting. If you're learning a complex, heavy lift like a clean and jerk, you don't start with 300 pounds on the bar, right?
No, obviously not. You'd end up in the hospital.
Exactly. You start with a PVC pipe. You perfect the physical form without the pressure of a catastrophic spinal injury. And the text argues that negotiating in low-stakes situations functions the exact same way. It builds the behavioral reflex of making the ask. So when you do walk into that boss's office, the muscle memory is already there.
But wait, doesn't your own analogy kind of prove my point? Lifting a PVC pipe doesn't trigger your central nervous system the way 300 pounds does.
Well, no, but it trains the form.
But the text defines courage specifically as acting despite fear. If this low-stakes practice is explicitly designed to avoid the pressure of rejection, well, where's the fear?
You're still practicing the mechanics of the conversation, though. The form is the same.
Sure, but you're removing the one element that matters, the stakes. If you remove the fear, you aren't practicing courage. You're just having a comfortable chat with a barista.
I wouldn't say it's just a chat.
It is, though. You're trying to cure a fear of heights by stepping off a curb. When that same person walks into a high-stakes salary negotiation, the real pressure returns, the fear returns, and that low-stakes habit disintegrates because it was formed in a vacuum. It just isn't a transferable skill.
I see why you think that. But let me give you a different perspective. The text leans on Seneca for a reason, right? The inaction itself creates the difficulty.
Okay.
Seneca says, "It's not because things are difficult that we don't dare. It's because we don't dare that they are difficult."
The act of daring breaks the seal of hesitation.
But is it actually changing the difficulty?
Yes. Once you dare to ask for like a discount at a coffee shop, the difficulty shrinks because you realize the simple act of asking doesn't destroy you. It transforms the difficult into the possible.
It's a beautiful quote, I'll give you that, but when we talk about high-stakes negotiations, it gets cause and effect completely backwards.
How so?
It is precisely because things are difficult, because the stakes are your livelihood, because the power dynamics are totally unbalanced, that we hesitate. The difficulty exists objectively, long before our hesitation even kicks in.
Well, the stakes exist, yes.
Right. Successfully asking for a free pastry at a bakery doesn't change the objective difficulty of facing down a corporate board.
But I think we definitely converge on the text's core observation here. The fear of negotiating is intensely paralyzing.
Oh, without a doubt.
And whether the barrier is entirely in your head or practically in the room, courage, acting despite that fear, is the only way to move forward.
Agreed. The real question we're left with is how best to forge that courage in the face of reality. Because to me, relying on low-stakes environments to prepare for high-stakes reality is like bringing a squirt gun to a house fire.
Which brings us back to you, the listener. As you look at your own upcoming negotiations, it's worth taking a hard look at your hesitation. Ask yourself which of your barriers are truly material risks, and which ones are just your mind making the water look darker than it actually is.
Yeah, that's the real test.
Thank you for joining us on The Debate.